You are listening to the Unleashed and Aligned podcast, where we strip away the noise, unleash our truth, and align with our highest self. I'm your host, Coach Felicia, a life coach, energy guide, and your biggest believer. Now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Unleashed and Aligned podcast. I am here with Gloria Polo, the creative force behind Fire Dragon Photo. Her photography is rooted in personal empowerment, sensual expression, and the vibrant communities she calls home. Gloria first picked up a camera as a child, learning from her mother in the family darkroom. Her early interests later evolved through years of community involvement, creative exploration, and a deep desire to capture the spirit and strength of women and queer identity. Gloria launched her photographic career in San Francisco's leather and kink scene in 2003, where she quickly became known for her provocative, emotionally charged portraits. Her work reflects the powerful dynamic between artist and subject, blending raw energy with a compassionate eye. Over the years, her mission has expanded to create affirming, high caliber images for individuals of all sizes, ages, genders, and background. Her exhibits, Local Leather, Dangerous Curves, and Pussy Pussy challenge the mainstream idea of beauty and sexuality while celebrating bold, body positive narratives. Gloria's lens is unapologetically inclusive, with each frame involving the viewer to see power and playfulness where it's too often ignored. Beyond the studio, Gloria's work intersects with movement and performance. She collaborates with aerialists and adult circus performers, capturing the beauty of their bodies in flight and flow. Fire Dragon photo session is a transformative experience from thoughtful consultation and creative direction to the final carefully crafted image. Gloria doesn't just take your picture, she helps you see yourself in a new light. Explore her work at firedragonphoto.com, which we are going to link in the show notes. Gloria, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
So, to start off, how do you identify with the LGBTQ plus community? And if you have any specific labels, and what are your pronouns that you use?
At this point, I don't generally use that many labels. It's appropriate to describe who I am at this point in time. So I consider myself a post-op trans woman. I'm involved in the kink and sex positive communities. So my pronouns are she, they. In the kink world, I'm a switch, a dominant leading switch. I don't know. That's pretty much me.
Awesome. What can you describe for me what a switch is?
In the kink BDSM world, we have in sex, it would be top and bottom.
Oh,
So in
okay.
the positive world, you're talking about tops and bottoms. In kink and BDSM, it would be dominant and submissive. And so some people are strictly dominant and will never be submissive. Some are submissive and won't switch. And so
Oh, okay.
they enjoy playing either way.
Oh, thank you for that explanation.
Sure.
So, I want to talk a little bit about what it was like discovering your identity and like when did it happen and take us back to that experience that really shaped who you are today.
So this was a long time ago. A lot of your listeners may have a hard time relating to this because I did recognize that I was non binary, that I was not who the world said I should be in kindergarten. My father took me into the school to introduce me to the teacher in the building, and I chose the girls' bathroom, the pink door. And my mom remembers this pretty clearly that the teacher took her aside and said, "This is not right, that you need to tell him at that point in time, that's not where they should go to the bathroom." And I remember it distinctly. My mother remembers it distinctly. And so that was definitely a defining point. It was also a defining point of understanding that this isn't something to be brought out into the open. My mother did not do anything about it. She was very chill. She's whatever, it's a bathroom. She was an amazing woman. But internally, I knew that I needed to not say that out loud. So I don't remember it being that much a part of my life growing up into high school. And that's when I started cross dressing and I found some of my mom's clothes in the attic. And I don't know what compelled me to put them on, but it felt right. I kept that hidden through high school. My friends and my brothers, I have four brothers, evidently at points they found my stash and thought it was trophies from my sexual exploits. I found that out after I transitioned, that certain things aren't spoken
Mm.
in life. And then, let's see, I guess it was post high school. I was in my first apartment. My girlfriend was working at a department store like Walmart or whatever. And her girlfriend thought it would be fun to send me some panties in an anonymous envelope. So the next time she came over, I had the panties on when we got into bed, and she's, "What?" And so that was my outing to her about that. So that was in the 60s to give you
Okay.
like some time frame. Kindergarten was in the 50s. And so my girlfriend was actually accepting. She didn't freak out. She didn't walk away. And we were both in an age of sexual discovery. So we were together until 2000s. And so we explored it. And we explored cross genders for both of us. We explored bondage and sensual play, which for me, the kink world is more about sensation play than sexual play.
Mhm.
That's more what it's about. And so it was a very slow, gradual process.
I love that it sounds like you had a lot of good acceptance and people that really cared about you and loved you and just accepted you for who you were in your life. With like your mother, okay, it's not a big deal. And then your girlfriend not freaking out about it. And then also probably being curious, it sounds like, about her own identity and things like that. And so I think that's amazing that you had these people in your life to feel through it as well.
I'm really lucky in that, in having such positive and never any really negative, serious issues. I certainly had my own internal guilt and shame sometimes.
Mhm.
Not very much, really.
Yeah, that's amazing. And especially, I would assume at the time, that wasn't a very common thing. Like, I think that it's a lot more common now, but in the 60s, I would assume that it would be very uncommon and feeling a little more isolated. So it's nice that you had those people to support.
It was a different time. There
Yeah.
was very little information. As a teen, preteen, I scoured the libraries for anything I could find that there weren't even words for this. And Ann Landers was probably the main source of information. She was a columnist in newspapers across the country that wrote relationship advice, growing up advice, and her take on it was that these are heterosexual men going through a phase and that they'll grow out of it and they're just cross dressers and that's what's going to happen. I tried that route. I've always been mostly attracted to women and not men. So that felt right. That there wasn't anything like inconsistent there. Gay people were not out at all at that time. In high school, there were some women I knew that were lesbians, but there were no men that were out in the least. That was like the worst thing you could be. And so there was all of that. And without the information, it was up to me to try to figure this out in the dark, really.
Yeah.
And I am lucky that my girlfriend stuck with me and we were together for 30 plus years from high school until ultimately she was 100% heterosexual. And we knew that. I had a hard time accepting it, but because both her parents turned out to be gay, one of her siblings, and so it was a crazy world too that I was in with this other parental couple going through their discovery of their sexuality. It was a very different time, like I said in the beginning. But
Yeah.
I made it through and figured it out.
I love that. So, what parts of yourself did you have to hide to survive, or did you feel like you had to hide to survive? And how have you begun to reclaim them, or how do you reclaim them now?
I had to mask as a man. That's not who I felt I was. I didn't relate to men. I had close male friends growing up and had four brothers, so there wasn't a lot of women in my life other than like my cousins, and that was where I loved visiting them and being with them. There was one a year older, one a year younger than myself, and so I felt really like in my place there. It was a very special place in my life. And in school, the norms applied that boys hang out with boys and girls hang out
Mm,
with girls. And I didn't mind doing like the stuff. We grew up in Connecticut, and so grew up playing out in the woods and exploring things out there in nature. That's definitely my happy place. And it was just a normal life. Once I was like really started working, then it became more of a mask. Of,
okay.
Unfortunately, my work was uniformed in that I had to wear a shirt and tie and a jacket, or I was in a tech lab, electronics lab too, and then it was just like I had a lab coat and stuff like that. So it was a uniform that I put on, but I found ways to be expressive with like color. And I was into a period of matching my shirt and my socks.
Yeah.
And it was like my brand and every neurodivergence, probably, and part of a way of expressing myself in some way in this bland male world that I was supposed to pretend to be. About that time, when I moved to the Bay Area, I was immediately involved in the gender community. I joined a group called ETVC that was an educational TV channel based on transvestite, very outdated term these days. And within a year, I was the leader of that organization.
Wow.
I was working on outreach and trying to find new members. I would get letters in back in the day, would write letters back to these people. And it was amazing to make some difference in people's lives and help them find community and find that they're not the only one in the world like this. It was a pretty special time, and we had monthly meetings. There were actually like probably half a dozen orgs in the Bay Area that had each one had their monthly meetings. So there was a lot of opportunity that I don't really see today.
Mm.
Meet face to meet. We would have surgeons and therapists and voice coaches and all kinds of support
Wow.
and educate. There were conferences and different group meetings. I was at the first IFGE convention in Chicago, International Foundation for Gender Education.
Wow.
That would have been like in the 80s, 90s maybe.
So does that group still exist today that you were in? That sounds like an amazing group.
I think it might. Once I transitioned and had surgery, I went into my own life. Now
Okay.
I was able to live my own life and had good support. I met another woman who we partnered up together, and she totally accepted me and my identity and was bisexual. And so I've had, luckily, so much good support. When my mother, it was, I guess, pretty late in life. No, as an adult in my 30s, I guess, that I came out to my mother because I was out in the public. There was a television show called People Are Talking that were in the major cities in the US. And I did a show in Philadelphia and San Francisco talking about how couples don't need to break up because someone is non-binary. At that point was mostly talking about cross-dressing, men cross-dressing other women, and how wives could support that. My first wife, Kathy, was so supportive of that through my transition. And we owned a business together, a printing graphic design business. We didn't lose a single customer when I transitioned because she showed such a positive attitude and everyone else followed. She had a been negative, and I've seen this happen, the world would have turned against me.
Yeah.
Very lucky. Oh,
Yes, it sounds like like I said, I'm so happy that you've had really good support. And like you also mentioned, it doesn't come without challenges, and hiding who you are, not being able to go out into the world and feel like you can't be that person, and maybe you find these little ways to express yourself, like you had the matching socks and shirts and things like that, and trying to find creative ways, but it's still you're still suppressing a portion of you, and that suppression, it I feel like it could take a toll on a person to not be able to really show who they are, and I think that this is not just for members of the LGBTQ community. I think this is for people in general that suppress who they are to try and fit into these boxes that society tells them who to be. But did you feel like you had to show or present a certain way to the world for acceptance, or were you at all fearful of maybe people physically abusing you or maybe losing your job? Tell me a little bit about that.
I certainly was concerned about my job at some level, and especially making television appearances. There was a risk of exposure, but I also felt secure and safe enough in my job position that I would have, I think, been able to deal with it.
That's good.
By then, we were into like AIDS times, and so gay men were out, and there was at least some acceptance, and I worked at a pretty liberal company, I would say, in electronics. And so I considered transitioning on the job. I was a product marketing manager for a computer rental company, and some other things transpired that I decided to leave that company and start printing a graphic design company. I'd had an interest in graphic design since high school and photography. And Kathy was a very talented artist. She had just completed her degree program at San Jose State for scientific illustration. And so it seemed like a natural thing to do. I was bored with the computer industry by that point, and so I left the computer industry and started a printing company from scratch.
Wow. That's any kind of entrepreneur journey is a hard, amazing feat. So congrats to really taking that on and you have an amazing photography business now. Tell me a little bit about like what your muse is for your photography. Do you capture anything or is there a certain aesthetic that you're looking for?
It's changed over the years a lot. When I was before transition, I shot landscapes and macro photography of plants and bugs and things. I didn't take pictures of people at all. And post transition, that's all I take pictures of. I still do landscapes and patterns and nature. My passion is capturing people, and I've come to realize that through my eye, through my vision, I can capture something in people that they don't see in themselves.
I love that.
And so that's empowering to whoever I'm shooting, whether it's performers, whether it's private. They used to be called boudoir sessions. Now I'm just calling it personal empowerment because I work with people all over the gender spectrum and even cis straight people.
Yeah.
But no, I love capturing people and being able to show them something they don't see in themselves normally when they look in the mirror or when they go through the world. Performers, they can never see their performance. They're doing it. So now with cell phones, of course, they can. But even there, I know I have a unique eye of what I capture and what I generate that people don't see that when they're watching the performance, whatever it is. And it's a gift. I've come to really acknowledge that I don't see the world the same way as other people do. We all see it differently, of course, but there's been some recent scientific developments about how some people can see more colors than other people. And it's a spectrum, like everything. Some people have color blindness and have
Mhm.
very limited color vision. And I think I have hyper sensitive vision, my ADHD. I'm constantly capturing visual stuff. And so I'm a very visually oriented person. And that's how I like to communicate as well.
I think that's beautiful. I love that you can bring out and see and capture the beauty that somebody else might not be able to see, especially within themselves. And I think that's really important. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think that it's amazing that it sounds like throughout your work, it's evolved to really show that side of you and bring that side out.
It definitely has evolved, especially I'd say in these years post COVID. But when I first started and was offered the opportunity for a gallery show, I put out all my best work that I could find, everything that I thought was worth showing to the public. And then they offered me the chance to come back and do a new gallery show.
Wow.
Oh my God. That means they have to create like at least 10 new images that are worthy of being exhibited. And it really pushed me to work harder, get a bunch of friends in the community together for photo shoots. And it's been really cool to reconnect with those people now, 20 years, 25 years later. One of those models is my virtual assistant now. So it's been a great experience and journey through that. I would like to reshoot some of those people, do then and now.
Oh, fun.
But I'm also excited to be moving forward in where and what I'm shooting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so awesome. So I really think that a lot of people get nervous or feel like anxious if people are using certain pronouns. And because of how most people grow up in society thinking like it's he or she, and when they have somebody that says, oh, I go with they, them, or if they have any kind of differences in pronouns other than what I guess the appearance would show,
Mhm.
people get I hope that most people are coming from a loving space and they want to get it right and they get nervous about getting it right. And then if they mistakenly say the wrong pronoun, I really want to understand. I think the people that get it wrong immediately are like, "Oh, they hate me, they're pissed off, they're all these things." I'm assuming that probably has happened maybe for you, and you're nodding your head yes, so I'm gonna ask, like, how do you feel when that happens? What goes on in your brain?
It's changed a lot over time as I've transitioned, and I've had a lot of good female role models in my life in this regard. My first wife, Kathy, was about the same height, long, beautiful hair, big breasts, and she had a deeper voice and not a particularly feminine voice. And she would sometimes get misgendered.
Oh,
And so I learned through that there's a range of what's considered acceptable as female, and especially in this country, very narrow. And that I've known other women that have had have been kicked out of bathrooms, and that's never happened to me. One time I had in my entire life had an issue at the bathroom. That was when I was in school at going to college, and one woman questioned it, and I just said, "I've got the same parts, and that's where I belong."
yeah.
So again, I've been lucky. I have still get misgendered at times, and it's hard. And I've just learned to roll with it and not let it upset me. It's people see what they want to see. And a lot of when people misgender people, same with calling people gays and faggots. A lot of times the people calling people gays and faggots are closeted gays that they are struggling with accepting why they get hard when they see a man.
Yeah. I was just talking to somebody about this where when people are you know, highly judgmental or want to box somebody in, it's like they built this own box for themselves, or maybe they felt the pressure of society or their family to really enclose themselves. And I do believe that when we judge other people, there's these parts of us that we've hidden and we've closed off. And because they're showing their true self and they're expressing themselves in the biggest way that they know how, that the person that's judging, it's almost like it brings up their own fears and their own inner insecurities, and they can bring it out in these mean, disrespectful ways or judgmental ways.
It can be, and there's, like, the people that knew me for 40 plus years before I transitioned, and most of my family and friends from high school, they've not had a problem. I have one aunt who just refused to even try, but most people have definitely made the effort. And when I transitioned, there wasn't really this concept of being non-binary.
Uh-huh.
And I learned through my transition that we're all have male and female characteristics, physically, mentally, socially, all of that, and that it ebbs and flows in all of us too, some more than others. And so I was very adamant about being she, her pronouns back then. But I really have had very little problem with that. I've traveled all over the country. I've never felt unsafe in Texas, where my brother lives. In Florida or the East Coast, I've traveled and I never felt unsafe. And I'm cautious.
Mm.
I've never had any problems or anything. And maybe I stay away from those situations. But I think part of it is like the energy we carry. When I was
Yeah.
first transitioning, I would get really upset with people when they misgendered me. It was probably because I was nervous and showing anxiety to begin with. And the more comfortable I got in my own body and the less bothered I got when someone did misgender me, it was like, whatever. I'm never going to see them again.
Mhm.
So what does it matter? If it's someone I care about, then we're going to have a conversation. And I have had to have that with family members.
I love that you said that because I think that's important for so many people is to understand people are going to get things wrong because society wants us all to categorize things. And if you're not fitting into a box or a category, people, it's just like almost automatic. And hopefully it's not meant hurtfully and they're just they're making assumptions, which people shouldn't make assumptions, but people do. And I love that you say, I had got mad and now I just let it go. And I think that's an amazing energy to have is kind of like, where do you want to spend your time on this? And then also the people that I care about, I want to make sure that they are getting it correct and they do respect my boundaries. And I think that's important as well. I was listening to Alok Van Minnen talk about when somebody says him instead of they, and
Mhm.
it's okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I messed up. And then they do it again. And he said, you do it a second time and it's okay. I'm going to do better. And he said, because doing better and trying is the deepest form of love that you can give. And I love that because I think that's such an amazing thing to hear because I think that in trying, you may mess up these things that have been ingrained in us. And I think we can get too, when we get too caught up in our head and we get too nervous about it and then we don't talk about it or we don't, it's almost like we avoid conversations because we're like, I don't know what to say or how to say it. And I think that's not good either. I think having the conversation and really owning, "Oh my god, I messed up. I'm sorry. I'm gonna try again." I think that can go so much of a longer way, and I wanna think that most people are more accepting of you just owning that you made the mistake and that you're sorry about it.
I would agree with that. I've screwed up people's gender myself, and because I'm in the middle of gender world, being non-binary and gender fluid, so they present a different way when I see them at different times. And having known people and watched them go through the transition of trying to figure out where their gender is. And in today's world, it doesn't have to be an either or.
Mm.
Just find your way to where you feel comfortable. And it was hard for me to understand like non-binary because I was just everything gender was certainly binary when I was raised.
Mm.
Other than gay people, there which isn't gender, there wasn't words or room for that. And now that I have more words to describe it, I would say I'm non-binary. And it's somewhat gender fluid. When I first transitioned, I wouldn't touch anything that was male associated. I knew how to work on cars. I'd rebuilt engines. I can build houses and remodel and all these things. Didn't want to touch any tools at all. And at some point, I'm like, this is stupid. Why am I disempowering myself as a woman? I should be empowering myself in any way I can. And realize that I don't need to give that stuff up because it's considered male or whatever. It's like totally free. I'm glad I don't have to work on my car anymore or do remodels.
But
I
you can if you
know,
need to. Yeah, you have the skill, you can if you need to.
I have those powers.
I love that. I think that's amazing, and I think that it's my little nephew absolutely loves pink, and there's so many people that are like, "He's a boy, he shouldn't like pink," and I'm like, "It's a color. What is it? You're putting a like
How
sexuality on a
much,
color."
how much power you give to these colors, objects, whether it's dolls or trucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
I think it's amazing. I have so many female friends that can build stuff or can work on stuff, and I just think that so many people look at that and say, "Wow, she knows how to do that." And it's like anybody can learn any skill if they just tried to learn it. And it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to be this is associated with this gender only or this male female energy. And like you said, also, we have both of them flowing through us. We have them within like the chakras that are yin and yang, and all of that stuff is, and we all have the different polarities or whatever you want to call it of male and female, and it's about really going through life, in my opinion, is going through life and finding out, what do you like? What is it that what colors do you like? What kind of things do you like working with your hands? Do you like flowy outfits? Do you like colorful things? Do you like your hair long or short? I don't think it has to be this big deal of you can only like this because you're this way. And I think that's something that's beautiful about people in transition or already gone through it, that they show to the world is I can be this and that, and it's totally okay. And I'm finding that within so many things. I actually had a couple friends tell me that when I was talking about just my business, and I have to be this way and I have to be that way. And they're like, Felicia, you can be this and that. It's all right to weave it in, and you can find it in so many different things. But I think that it's a beautiful thing that the LGBTQ community shows people is like how to be open and how to like explore yourself and really understand it from a non-binary way. And I think that's amazing.
exactly. It applies to all parts of life. And you can be different things, different people at different times in your life. I'm really going through a lot of changes and growth right now and discovering new parts of myself or accepting parts of myself that maybe I haven't, and just feeling a whole lot better about myself. And it shows.
I think, and I love that you're still exploring that. It's not a final destination. It's throughout your life, you're going to be evolving and changing and finding new ways to understand yourself on a deeper level. No matter how old you get, no matter how young you are, it's always happening. There was something that I thought of that I just lost the thought, but oh, it was about it was somebody explaining like your body and how you go through changes, and people want it was about weight loss and how people want to be like, when I was 20, this is how my body worked and this is what works for me. And but it's let's explore you at 40 or 50 or whatever it is. And this is how this let's understand and explore your body at this age. And I think that's it doesn't just go for whatever kind of goal you're looking for. I'm just using that weight loss thing as an example, but it's like that. It's who are you at this age and how do you want to feel? And your beliefs and your values can change, and that's okay. And we're not stuck to these things.
That's a lot of it. I went through a big weight loss that was like I'm a chef and I was up at 300 pounds and
Wow.
suffering physically from it with physical issues and basically was pretty much crippled.
Mhm.
And then decided that wasn't who I wanted to be. My mother, who passed away a couple of years ago, was very active and fit till the end of her life, really. And I realized if I've got the potential to live into my 90s and beyond with today's technology, I don't want to be miserable and in pain. I was working at a retirement facility, so I saw that every day with people younger than myself coming in and using mobility chairs and things and never really being able to walk again. And I made a very active choice that wasn't who I wanted to be. I wanted to be enjoy my life and have adventures. I think really I want to always be Arnie. Have trouble relating to a lot of people in my age range because they have stopped learning, or some are more active than others, certainly, but so many people in retirement just stop doing very much. Certainly learning, but just I'm more excited about life now than I think I've been in the past.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think that we should never stop learning. I want to ask you this question for anybody that is maybe confused on their journey or they don't have a lot of support and they are not sure about what their identity is and they're going through those like initial first stages. What kind of advice would you give to somebody in that?
In today's world, there's just so much information out there. The problem is there's too much information and too much not so great information in all aspects of life. So it's finding that's why I'm disappointed there aren't more local groups like face to face. And there are, I think, some different queer opportunities and venues and opportunities to meet up and meet people that are like you or maybe not like you. And but to be able to openly talk about your who you think you might want to be, or all these ideas that when I was younger, I was very confused, especially because I didn't have much information to say, oh, yeah, there's other people like me. Now I feel you have to be pretty blind or something to not face all the opportunities to be whoever you want to be. It may be a hard choice. Being gay and queer and different in today's world is still a challenge. And being here in the Bay Area, this is definitely a bubble. But also, like I said, I've traveled all over the country and have not faced any issues at all. So I think part of it is your energy, what you put out, you're going to get back. And I see that when I'm having a bad day, that's usually when I get misgenders.
Oh, I love that you talked about energy, and I think that's so we can get so much in our heads, and I understand, especially if you're confused and you don't know, and maybe your family tries to put you in a category and you don't want to be in that. It can be difficult, but I think staying true to yourself and really keeping your energy safe and sacred, I think that is such good information.
Every one, I really feel it doesn't matter if you're gender, not non-binary, cis, het, whatever. You go through the stage in life where you've been told what to do, and your family, whatever that is what your normal is. What you're expected to be has pretty much been put on you. And some people can break out of that and be themselves, but those are, I think, the exception. We're taught to try to fit in and all of that, whether we're neurodivergent or whatever it is. And so we all mask at some level. And then when you reach teenage years, you start to begin to have some room to explore who you are and connect with different people who you feel some sense of connection with. And then once you're out as an adult into the working world, that changes a lot with friends and things. And I feel in some ways you're supposed to fit into the lane even more for a bit. But
Yeah.
today's world, I feel there's room to break out of that. It's not easy for anyone. If it's your parents' expectations of who you should be, or your siblings, or your friends, at some point you realize this really isn't who I am. And that can change over life too. You feel like, okay, I found my space. And then you realize, no,
Yeah.
like being this other person now.
Yeah, and I think that it is important to, like you were saying, working in a retirement community, or I used to work at this spa, and there would be people that came in from the medical field, and they were like, one of the things that I always heard is that when people were on their deathbed or close to it, the one thing that they regretted was not being fully themselves and not doing what they wanted to do and trying to stay in those boxes and categories and things like that. And so I think, yeah, it's hard, like you said, but it's also harder to go through life being in a box that you don't feel like is meant for you. It's harder to suppress all of those things than really be who you fully are and happy.
I don't know that it's, sometimes I think it's easier to do that because
Mm,
that's why people mask so much, is because it's easier to be who you're expected to be than to not. And then we face burnout and things like that, and have these sometimes major meltdowns in our life where it's like we finally realize that we're doing stuff that we can't, it's not sustainable, even though you've been doing it for 20 or 30 or 40 or 60 years of your life. I've seen people transition in their 60s and 70s and 80s.
yeah, internally is what I meant.
Yeah.
It's harder on your energy and your
Yes.
body and your I'm all about the chakra system and your energy, and I do feel like you can create illness within your body
Yes.
because of the energy that you carry. And so when you suppress things, I believe that you can create more ailments within your body and within yourself. Not only just like depression and things like that, but like actual like cancers and illness. I think that you can create a sick body from the energy that you've not allowed to release.
I agree. I believe that most illness is caused by things like that. And some of it's chemical pollutants and things
Mhm.
and genetics and all that. But
Yeah.
I've seen it in my life where people have let their anger basically kill them, their anger
Yeah.
for someone else. And then in my personal life, in my teens and into my adulthood, I had really bad dermatitis on my hands. Not quite as bad as eczema can be, but it was often open and sore. And once I transitioned, I haven't had any problems with things like that.
Isn't that amazing? I think that's
So
incredible.
our body is trying to tell us things. It knows when we're struggling. Definitely the mind controls a lot of how the body reacts.
Yeah. Oh,
Hypertension. I was on hypertension, cholesterol meds, and one other thing in my 30s. I'm not on any of that anymore.
wow.
Nope.
I love that. So before I end this amazing interview and I could talk to you forever, you're such an amazing person, an amazing photographer. I have the pleasure of meeting you in person and you have such a great energy. But I always end with what does unleashed and aligned mean to you and especially around the context of identity and your journey with this Pride Month.
Could you repeat that, please?
Oh, yeah. What does unleashed and aligned mean to you, especially in the context of your identity or your journey within this Pride Month theme?
I feel like I'm just really actually discovering and accepting all of my pieces. Like, I've struggled with my neurodivergence. I knew I was ADHD, but I've really come to accept that it's more than that. And accepting that part of me, that's part of my being, that my gender is part of my being, and accepting those and learning what the strengths are. And it's a real challenge to deal with weaknesses. But the more that I've done, and the more I just find putting things in alignment, taking responsibility for myself, things have gotten better. And it's not easy. It's not easy at all. Being responsible adults. I really don't want to, but my life has been a lot better since I've taken on those things. Responsibility for my health, that is so huge. And accepting that things that I shouldn't be eating that I love, it's a lot better when I don't eat them. It feels frustrating sometimes to have such a restrictive diet, but when my body tells me it's happy, it's so worth it.
Yeah, yeah. I love that when, you're saying accepting yourself and I don't I think that there's so many parts of us that can feel like because also we as humans we like to categorize and we like to put things into to good or bad, strong or weak. But I've gone through my own journey and still going through it of accepting like I would say the shadow side or the things that I don't technically like as much. And I
Mm.
found it's hard to do like radical acceptance. Like you can't go from not liking a lot of things to being like I love everything. But really giving myself space to allow me to be whoever that is, and maybe sometimes say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing and be okay with parts of me that I don't particularly like. The more I do it, the more I'm okay with accepting it, and like you said, the happier I am. I'm just like, "Yeah, this is me." Okay, sometimes I cuss like a sailor. That's me. It's okay. Not everybody will accept it, but I think that's an amazing thing to do, and to anybody that's listening, like, it starts with awareness, and it starts with, like, little acceptances, but it's such an amazing, healthy, good journey that really it does make you feel so much more whole and loving to yourself.
And I think part of the acceptance is forgiving yourself for things
That's huge.
and accepting that we're all imperfect, that we're going to screw up again and again. That's part
Mhm.
of this journey. Some people learn from it, some people don't.
Yeah, and just trying to be the your best.
That's, yeah, yeah. And I really feel we're all trying to do our best. But with today's world, it's really hard. We're beaten down from all sides. Technology isn't really all that great for us. Phones and dead scrolling is not
Yeah.
healthy at all. And we all do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's understanding and catching like, for me, I have to catch myself and be like, "Okay, put your phone away." Like, I have times where I literally will just put my phone in the bedroom, and it's, like, off limits. Like, I'm not getting on it at all.
I've had to do that, and that's where, like, being responsible for yourself, it's hard, but the more you can take care of yourself, for me, a lot of it's been eating healthier, and my body and my brain are both a lot happier
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
that.
Thank you so much, Gloria. Again, it's been a pleasure to chat with you today. Thank you for being part of this Pride Month theme. And I'm so happy that you did this interview with me.
Yeah, thank you for featuring these, making something special for this month.
Yes. If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review so that we can connect with more people to develop our mind, body, and spirit.